Good afternoon. I'm Bill Anderson, and I'm coming live from the Costa del Sol. Beautiful day again on the Costa del Sol. A bit windy, but we can't really complain. We're well into autumn now. I'm absolutely delighted to have my guest today, John Wheatley. Welcome, John.
Thank you. Good to be here.
How are you doing?
Very well. It's a good Friday, isn't it?
Yeah. Every Friday's a good one, John, but I don't know if you get weekends off in the work that you're doing, because we're going to be talking about that a bit later. And first of all, though, John, could you tell us a little bit about sort of where your roots are in the UK?
Originally, I'm from Sheffield, so I have a Yorkshire passport. I'm very proud of it. But then I actually moved around the country a lot because after university, I went to work in the court system. So I used to get transferred up and down the country. So I spent quite a bit of time in the Midlands, then down in Sussex, and then back up into Northamptonshire again.
Right, okay.
And that's where I met my wife now.
And you're still with her?
Yeah.
Well, that can't be a bad thing then, John.
She puts up with a lot, let's say, bless her.
Okay, so you started off working within the courts system, and you know how long did you work in that, John, and what happened afterwards?
It was a little bit strange, really. I was just finishing end of the university, and I got a call from the careers department saying, "What do you fancy doing?" I said, "I don't know. I'm going to take a year off and do gap."
Right.
My parents turned around and said, "Oh no, you're not. You're getting a job." Being back in the 80s, that's what parents did.
Right.
Very cruel, I think, but I did it. And I went for an interview to magistrates court, and being so cocky as you are when you're younger, said, "Where do you see yourself in 5 years' time?" So I thought, I'm not getting this job anyway. I said, "Oh, your job." I was there. I didn't even bother having a haircut. I got long hair, a suit that didn't fit properly. And then I left the interview thinking, "Oh, I've done my part. I've had an interview. That's the careers officer satisfied."
And
next day, I got a phone call that they want you to go and work there. I went, "Oh, no."
So you thought you deliberately bombed it, John, and it didn't work.
Yeah, and it turned out the lady who interviewed me, Bruce Dickinson from Iron Maiden, it was her auntie.
All right.
His auntie, I should say. And I got the job because I got long hair and looked a bit like him.
Yeah, well, that probably didn't work out the way you thought it would. What was like?
No.
What was life like, sort of working within the court system?
Back in the day, I mean, I've been out of it for years now, but we're talking early 90s. So it didn't matter what qualifications you had, you started at the bottom. So you started in the post room, making cups of tea for everybody, listening to people, and doing lots and lots of filing and paperwork and basic accounting.
Right.
And then from there, you used to progress into the courts, start sitting with an usher at the back of the court, listening, getting used to court etiquette, because it is, well, I don't know what it is like now, but back then it used to be steeped in tradition. So you had to show true respect as you walked into the court. You had to bow, no matter what.
Sure.
And you had to be silent until you were spoken to. And then gradually work your way up where you get to sit next to a court clerk as a court assistant. Then you can, if you're lucky, you become a court clerk.
Right.
And I went a slightly different way because I got really into family law. So I absolutely adored family law. But I still used to do juvenile courts and non-payment to fine courts. And I used to sit in on the odd committal proceedings for murderers and things as well.
Right.
But you used to do a lot. It's you could write a book. I mean, if anybody ever read the old James Herriot books, you could actually do something along that lines as it should happen to a court clerk.
Right.
Because the things that used to come across were funny. And you used to get lots of families who had come down with generations going through the court system. And to be honest, they were some of the nicest people you'd ever meet face to face.
Yeah.
Okay, some of them weren't so nice. But then you'd come across people who'd got a parking ticket and they'd be so aggressive. It was two extremes, and yet there was two different. It was miles apart in philosophy.
Yeah, but when it's kind of family tradition that you end up in court, you're probably on sort of first name terms with the judge and the magistrate,
yeah.
and then meet them for a pint afterwards. You know.
We did. I could do an unpayment to fine course on a Friday. I'd sit upstairs on the camera and watch them outside, and they'd be there taking all the jewellery and everything off, and coming in saying they got no money and can we just pay £2 a week?
Right.
And you go, really? And you just turn around to the magistrate. So we'll go a little bit informal here, and you call them by their first name. So come on, your dad's at the back. Yeah. He's nodding his head. He's thinking, "On, but you can afford this, can't you? Really? Or what are the other consequences?" And they're there reaching their pockets and things and bringing out little washers, really laying it on. You just have to say, "Come on, you've got to pay it. It's not a lot at the end of the day. Think of it as a tax." And they used to laugh at you and things. But you come across so many different people in the courts, and those kind of people, I could go out at night, and you're not really allowed to let them buy a drink, obviously.
Sure.
But they'd sit down and talk to you, have a bit of banter with you, and then you part. So you could, and these people could be serious burglars and things like that, but equally, you still have to treat them as human beings.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's a line that has to be crossed, obviously, and you can't do that. But you try to treat everybody with the utmost respect. Doesn't matter how, because otherwise it just breeds contempt at the end of the day, and you're making your life harder.
Yeah, absolutely. And as you said, I mean, I did a lot of work through the courts when I worked in the UK. I spent a lot of time in the local courts and the sheriff courts. With clients that I had, and yeah, you do, as you said, though, the formality in those days, and I'm going back into the 90s as well. The formality in those days was, you know, when the judge walked in, everybody had to stand up, and then you know, it really was quite a stuffy process, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, my I did some horrible cases which I've tried to forget about, but I always remember the highlight was when I was just starting out. I got a phone call, and the clerks just said the main court clerk's phoned in sick. It's an easy juvenile court. They're all in for petty offences. I'll be sat at the back of the court watching you. Do you want to have a go at it? And I thought, yeah, I'll do that. We sat in the court. I was looking through the papers. I thought, well, I know that family. I know this family. I knew them all.
Sure.
Because we literally got 3 generations coming in. And this little boy came in, and he looked tiny, but he was 12 years old. And I looked at the charge sheet, and CPS were there shaking their head, and they're having a chat with his parents. Because you try to, there's a system in place, but at the same time, you've got to try and make the best of it on the day, and hopefully encourage the young person to see their ways, so to speak. Seldom do when they're in that situation, but this chap came in and he was looking very, very timid.
Right.
And then he winked at his dad. I thought, here we go again. And I looked at it, and the papers went theft of wheel trims. I thought, it's 30 quid and a couple of hours community service, best case, as long as the paperwork's straight. I looked at the CPS, said, and they went through all the process and everything.
Right.
We stood for the magistrates to come in. Magistrate was sat there, and this judge is out. And next thing, this magistrate started shouting, hang him high. I went, oh no. And this little boy, he turned into a proper little boy, he started crying, and parents were shocked, and we just had to adjourn straight away. And the clerks of the justices came straight up and said, what was that? I said, I don't know. It turned out the night before, the magistrate had his wheel trims pinched.
Oh no. That was very unfortunate, wasn't it?
Yeah, it weren't his, but I had to go into the retiring home. So you could have told me about this. You saw it coming up. And he said, yeah, I thought I could control myself. So, well, the control now means we've got to let the case go.
Right.
And the CPS were there shaking their heads. So I brought the parents forward. I said, look, you're down on the court sheet for this afternoon for non-payment. Just have a word with him. We're going to have to let him go. Said, right. But if he comes through again and it's the same offence, don't expect... He said, won't be in clerks, the justice taking it in the stipendary, and they'll just push him. But we actually didn't see that boy again.
Right. So
Whether he didn't commit again, or it's just the fact he didn't get
he
caught,
didn't
but
get
I never
caught.
saw him
Yeah.
again. I saw his parents,
But
but they were fine.
tell me, John, working in this field, it sounds like potentially a job for life. You know, if you keep your nose
It
clean,
can be.
you could have
Yeah.
work. Welcome back. With a little problem there, just with our connection with my guest today, John Wheatley. But I see your internet connection has gone back to green again, John. So that's great.
Up and down, it's like traffic lights.
Yeah, and I should just explain that, yeah, I mean, you're actually only about 12, 15 miles, maybe about 17 kilometers away from me, but you live in the countryside, and sometimes internet in the countryside in Spain is a bit iffy, isn't it?
To say that's a bit of an understatement. We have 3 different internet providers, and we have to switch between them on any given day because I work from home, so I need
Right.
internet. So
Yeah.
and
So, John,
this time of day obviously seems to be a problem at the moment.
yeah, you were just telling us really why you decided to sort of leave what was essentially a fairly secure career within the court system, and how you ended up here in Andalusia.
Well, it was a bit strange when I was in the courts. Again, I don't know what the salary scales or anything like that are these days, but a court clerk, the maximum you could ever expect would be £30,000 a year.
Right.
That would be it at the time. Whereas solicitor could earn a lot more than that. But then to get into the solicitor's office, if you've gone down the magistrate's route, was sometimes difficult.
Uh-huh.
But I started to get moved around a lot by the Lord Chancellor's office. So, because I was doing family law,
Yeah.
and I ended up down in Sussex, and it got to a stage where you get a bit numb to it,
Uh-huh.
and you just see different cases coming through. It didn't shock you anymore, and I just decided that it was time to leave.
Right.
So I actually was offered a job at a university, recruiting and doing lecturing in the law school for
Right.
family law. So I took that, but then that didn't last too long because then we had 9/11, and most of my work was around India and Pakistan, and they cut off the student visas at the time.
Right. Okay.
So I then left the universities, and of all things, because I'd done marketing, law, and a couple of other things at university, I went into marketing because I thought I can fall back on that.
Sure.
And it worked. And then we came to Spain after a heavy tax bill in the UK. I thought, I'm working all these hours and they're taking more than half my wages.
Sure.
We just literally sold the house and moved over, no jobs or anything. And it's a struggle. It always has been a struggle in Spain because you have to work a lot longer hours.
Sure.
People think it's nice, sunny, Costa del Sol, you can go to the beach every day. But the fact of the matter is, for most people, if you're of a working age, you have to work a lot more hours than you would do normally.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, people do have this impression. People have this impression that we move here to Spain, and all we do is sort of wander about all day in flip flops and sit on the beach or lounge on the beach with a glass of sangria, and that's it. But as you say, working life in Spain is actually quite different from that, John, isn't it?
It's a total different mentality, but again, the lifestyle, you can't compare it.
Yeah.
I mean, we were speaking to somebody on Skype yesterday, or whatever it was on the phone, and they were in Northampton, and we were sat on the terrace, looking over the garden and everything, dodging the odd bee, and you could hear the rain hammering down, even though they're in the living room with double glazing.
Right.
And it was black as anything. So you can't compare the lifestyles, and you have to go with what you dealt. And
sure.
I would never go back to the UK. I absolutely adore it here, and you get used to the hours. It doesn't matter which country you go to in the world; it's a different way of living, and you have to adapt to it.
But John, I mean, let me just say this. From what you describe about your life in the UK, it couldn't be any further away from your lifestyle here in Spain, could it?
now.
Right, we're gonna talk a little bit about this because we were chatting the other day. You don't have pets. You have some kind of zoo, don't you?
We do. We've always been involved with various animal charities and people charities as well. I've always brought the children up to. We're not holier than thou or anything like that. It's just that I think just a tiny bit of help to somebody or something makes a big difference.
Yeah.
So over the years, we've had a lot of dogs, cats. There was one time when the Guardian asked us if we could help them with these hamsters that they got from a house, and thought, a couple of hamsters, that's fine. 200 hamsters. And I was tearing my hair out because we'd got a lot of cats living outside, and they were just walking up and down these hamster cages, licking the lips.
Right. So they thought it was a kind of buffet, yeah?
Yeah. And thankfully, we managed to rehome them through my daughter's school. All the kids got hamsters.
Right.
We've had rabbits that way and everything. So we're by no stretch of the imagination a charity, anything like that. It's some fantastic charities out there. We will help some charities and we'll take on a few animals. Mm-hmm. So at the moment, I've got no foster animals. I haven't got room for any fosters. So we've got dogs, parrots, ferrets, no cats at the moment, thankfully.
Come on, you have to tell us
tortoises.
about the tortoise.
Oh yeah, the largest one. There was her owner, bless him, passed away, and she'd been left to somebody, a friend of his, but they didn't know what to do. So they got him living. Well, she was living on their terrace, and this tortoise is 15 kilos almost. It's like a tank. And it was going around moving all the tiles and everything, and they make a lot of mess as well. Tortoises, they're not. They're solar powered rocks that eat and emit lots of other things as well. So we've ended up with that, and we call her Heidi Michelle, because she hides in the shell when you go near her.
Oh my goodness!
My wife's side.
So this tortoise weighs 15 kilos.
Yes, she's bigger than two of our little dogs put together.
Right.
And in the summer she lives outside. In the winter she'll come in, and if it's a nice day she'll go back out, otherwise she walks around the house.
Right.
And we have a parrot. Well, I've got two parrots, and he's got a big cage, and you'll hear him squawking every now and again because the cage starts moving.
Right.
And she's pushing it around the living room because it's got in her way.
Oh my goodness.
It's a bit comical. But you get used to it. I had an auntie when I was growing up, and she had lots of animals. And my mum used to tut at her a lot. Now I can just imagine my mother tutting at us, because it is a menagerie. But
it is. How many dogs have you got? Just
7.
7
dogs.
Now.
We've just got a puppy from. We did a charity event a week ago last Saturday. Right. So we'll have had him 2 weeks tomorrow. And he's 9 weeks old now, and he's causing chaos.
Yeah.
But he's fantastic. Because we've got all dogs. We've got a 17-year-old. We rescued him. He was found hanging in a tree with cigarette burns on him.
Oh,
and originally he was a foster, and it took us 3 years just to be able to get near him. And 17 years on, we've still got him. And it's taken all that time where I actually sit on my lap.
Right.
And
so
doddery old little son.
Do you see yourself, or does your wife see herself as saying at any point, enough is enough, no more?
We say that every animal.
Really?
We weren't going to get this puppy because we lost our other Rottweiler. We've got one Rottweiler already, but we'd lost our old boy 2 years ago to cancer, and we said never again because it broke our hearts. Now we've got another one.
Oh.
So it's the story of our lives, really. But we are reducing bit by bit. I mean, we used to have a lot of cats, and in the campo is lots of strays around. Sure. And we lost all our cats to the cat virus in the end. So we said no more.
Right.
We're not going through that again. And our last cat, she was 60. She died a couple of months ago. But she was a house cat. She was a Persian. Right. And we had her for ages, and she was lovely. But you can't replace it. It's not a pet, it's a member of the family. You
Yeah,
just can't
sure.
go out and replace one of them. So we're not
Yeah.
having any more.
Mind you, when you live in the countryside, John, having cats around is not always a bad thing, is it?
Now, I wish we had some because our neighbours have got horses and chickens.
Ah,
So I can watch rats run around the bottom of the garden or
right.
jump
Yeah,
over
yeah,
their fence,
yeah.
which is annoying.
And
But you live in the campo.
cats are so nice because they bring you these things as presents, don't they?
Yeah. Our last cat that lived outside came home with a 4-foot snake.
Ah,
And
yeah.
my son says, "Can we keep it, Dad?" I went, "No." And he went to pick it up and it went for him. It wasn't
Oh,
a poisonous one, but they do still bite to defend
yeah.
themselves. And he says, "Can you get rid of that, please, Dad?"
Oh.
So I had to go throw a blanket over it and carry it down the bottom of the land. So they
So,
do bring things.
so that's your kind of menagerie at home.
Mm.
But actually, we've got a couple of things we're going to talk about. I'm just going to mention this just now, though, John. You've gone from lecturing at university, the legal services, to become Dave's got some of his boys there with him just now. I don't know if you can see them, John.
Yeah.
Dave has several Rottweilers.
Mine's 8. Well, we took him to the vet on Monday, and he's put a kilo on in a week,
Oh,
and his paws are like paddles. And his parents were huge,
right.
so we think he's going to be big. But he's lovely. He's a
Yeah.
big cuddly bear.
So, John, one of the things that you came down here and decided to do, I don't know if you decided before you came or not, was to keep bees. Yeah.
Yeah.
How how did that come about? Come on.
It was a bit strange. I mean, when I was 10, we used to live in the countryside, well, on the fringe of the countryside, when I was growing up. And I used to go wandering, and I wandered through a field one day, and I got scared. I thought I saw a spaceman, and I panicked and ran, but I ran towards what I didn't know at the time were beehives, and he was shouting, "Don't go that way." And he called me back, and he explained what was happening. I'd never seen a beekeeper at that point. I was 10 years old.
Right.
And back then you could actually just talk to strangers.
Yes, of course. Yeah, yeah.
As it happened, he only lived about 500 meters away from us across the field. And after that, I used to go once a week and see these bees, and he'd show me them and everything. And at the time, I look back at it now and thought he was ancient, but he was probably in his 70s. And he was still around when we left England.
Right.
So he was doing well. And so I got introduced to bees at a very young age, but I never did anything with it. It was sort of, I could go, help, do something, learn something, and come away from it.
Mm-hmm.
And then when we moved to Spain, I thought about doing it, but then there was always something else coming up.
Right.
And it was only a couple of years ago where I had to think of doing something to distract me from work, because the doctor said I needed a pastime as a distraction. That I got back. I looked at the regulations, because there are quite a lot of regulations in Spain. It's not like England.
Yeah.
And I started spending money on acquiring different parts for the hobby, because it is quite expensive to start up.
Sure.
With.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Now it's still a hobby. It's not a business. We give a lot of the honey away. We sell some as well to fund the beehives.
Yeah.
And if we make a profit at the end of the year, we just split it up and give it to different charities, because again, it's a hobby. It's not a business. Otherwise, you have to start paying tax and things like that on it. It's
right.
Too complicated.
It is very complex here. That the sort of rules for what is classed as I don't know, work, or sort of monetizing a hobby, and it becomes very complicated, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, my wife's got an artisan certificate, so we can get exemptions on different IVAs and things like
Right.
that. But then we have to show that we've not made money. And that's quite easy with bees, because people think you just get a box of bees or catch a swarm and walk away, come back a few months later, you pull honey out of it. It's not the case really, because you have to have all the equipment for it. You have to check them, because essentially, yes, they are insects, but they're livestock. So you have a responsibility towards them.
Yeah.
And it always makes me a little chuckle when I see them on the internet. There's people doing these videos where they're just wearing shorts and t-shirt, nothing else, and going into beehives and thinking either incredibly brave or incredibly stupid, because you can't help but get stung.
Or maybe
brave in different ways.
Maybe brave and stupid in equal measures.
Yeah, I mean, I'm literally a spaceman when I go in my hives, because we've got Iberian bees which are slightly Africanized, which they all are over here, because Africa's not that far away.
Sure.
And in the 60s, the beekeepers introduced it to make them more productive because of the heat. And then I had, before Brexit, I had some Buckfast bees shipped over from Devon.
Okay.
And so
from Buckfast
I've
Abbey.
Still got those. Yeah. Well, just down the road, they're just called Buckfast, because you can get Buckfast bees shipped from Germany and everywhere.
Right.
But I thought I'd go straight to the source and just get some. And then in theory, I could put my hand in there without a glove on or anything, but I'm not daft. I prefer to come out and not be stinging and swearing.
Okay, John, we're going to take another short break. We'll come back and I want to talk to you a little bit more about the bees, and then we're going to talk about some other things as well. So short break just now, and I think we've got George Ezra dance all over me. Thank you, Dave.
Hi, I'm Robert Powell, and you're listening to Expat Radio.
Welcome back. I'm Bill Anderson, and we're coming live from the Costa del Sol with my guest today, John Wheatley. Welcome back, John.
Thank you.
We've been talking a little bit about, leaving the UK in very kind of formal settings and moving into, and really we're talking about countryside. Well, what classes is that in this part of Spain, which is usually kind of dry and brown, yeah? and amongst other things, becoming a beekeeper.
Yeah.
Okay. John, honey. Now, we do have actually a local beekeeper that we know, and Vicky loves her honey, and she gets it fresh from him. She buys about 6 or 7 jars at a time, and it kind of lasts her, over the winter into the summer. You're explaining that actually keeping bees is not a cheap thing.
It's not. I mean, if you catch your bees for free, that's one saving. But a hive, the actual box itself, you've got various styles, is different trains of thought. So you can speak to 10 different beekeepers and get 10 different answers.
Right.
Just like on any subject. So you can get a small, what I call a migratory layings box, which most of the beekeepers over here use, for about €40 each. And if you start off this year, you didn't get any honey out of it. Right. And possibly the next year as well, because there's only 12 frames in those.
Right.
And people have got different perceptions on it. So if you, I started off with laying hives in Spain because that's all I could get when I started here.
Okay.
I had to find somewhere where I could get the hives that I wanted, and then ultimately I ended up having to make my own because of the cost of it.
Right. Okay.
And there's lots of plans on the internet for it, and I get a couple of people who ask me to build them hives. I said, give me the wood, I'll make it for you. It's easy because I like doing it.
Right.
So I have Langstroth hives, which is a lot. You see a lot of people on YouTube with Langstroth. In England, a lot of people use national hives, which came out of post-war when they needed to build everything to a set size to maintain wood supplies and everything like that and keep costs down.
Right.
So lots of English beekeepers adore the national hives. I've got a couple of them. But my favourite personally, and it's only a personal choice, is Langstroth now.
Right.
But I've got top bar hives. I've got warrior hives. I experiment in all of them because it's a hobby. I don't need to go after production. It's just something that I enjoy doing. So I can look at how bees behave in different settings and things. That's because that's what I want to do.
So how many hives do you have, John?
I had 70, and unfortunately the other week my absolute favourite hive, the queen passed away in that. She was old, I
Right.
keep all my queens. Or I don't. You'll see on the internet some people clip bees' wings for the queen stop them flying away. Some will actually kill them when they're less productive. All I
Oh,
do is I make little retirement homes for them because I
right.
can't bring myself to kill them because I named them all. So I went in the hive and they made a new queen, and bless her, she was on the outside on the floor.
Oh,
So, but nearly 3.5 years, huh?
uh-huh.
She was my first Buckfast queen that I'd shipped over.
Right.
So anybody who's got any of jars of our honey, it's got Queen Annabelle on it.
Uh-huh.
That's the last deal you'll get with an Annabelle because she's gone,
Oh,
unfortunately.
oh, poor thing. But John, can you explain to us? I think I possibly know the answer to this, but I'd like to hear it from you. You know, uh, I know how much we pay for the honey from a local beekeeper. I don't think it's expensive, but if I were to go into the supermarket, I could probably get a jar of similar size for half the price. What's the difference?
The, good job my wife's not here when you mentioned supermarket honey.
Uh-huh,
Um,
uh-huh.
if you Let's say if you go into one of the larger French-owned chains that are over here,
Yes,
you'll see various kinds of honey. Now, a kilo of their what I would describe as actual honey is about 10 to 12 euros.
right.
But then they'll have honey that says of unknown origin in small print on the back, and you can get that for 2.95 up to €5.
Right.
So the unknown origin, as if I had camera on, you'd see me doing the old speech marks.
Right.
That is when it's been blended,
Okay.
and you can hold it to the light, and you might see little sugary crystals in there because it's not 100% honey in all probability.
Right.
Some of it is. It's a bit. You can't cast the assumption that that's all wrong. But this cheap honey is not imported. So it may have origin unknown, or it might say China, for example.
Right.
And a lot of countries can produce things a lot cheaper and far more higher amounts, let's say.
Right.
So a traditional beeper, just like the one you go to, if you put into context, one bee can produce half a teaspoon of honey in its entire life.
Right.
Now, to get a kilo jar of honey, you can imagine how many bees and how long that's taken
Sure.
to produce. So, and then you've got to extract it. You've got different ways to extract it. I mean, I can spin mine out with a big spinner and then a filter it, which is most of the jars where it's proper honey colour, but there's no particles or anything in there.
Uh-huh.
And then I can pasteurize it if I want as well.
Right.
Or I can do what I call raw honey. And the raw honey is where I literally chop it straight out of the frame and into a container. So you get bits of the comb, everything. It's really thick. It's got a molasses texture to it. Well, this year it has, but it's been so hot. But it's got a totally different taste. My wife describes it as when she was growing up, her nan used to give her a celery stick or a rhubarb stick and give her a pot of honey to dip into.
Right.
And she says it tastes just like that.
Uh-huh.
That's the closest you can get to it, to a memory past when it's really raw. It is stunning, but you can't give children under 18 months that because it's got so many different enzymes and everything in it. It may give them upset tummies. So I have to, if I am selling it, which I only probably do 20 jars of that a year.
Right.
I have to put stickers on the back, not suitable for children under 2 years old. And make sure that they're told well.
But surely, John, the kind of honey that you're producing or your bees are producing and you're putting into jars, you don't actually personally produce it.
No.
But the kind of honey that your bees are producing and you're jarring, it must have qualities about it that some, blended and processed honeys that might cost a quarter of the price in the supermarket doesn't have.
It's regional. So if you let's say if somebody was living 60 kilometers away from us, and the honey there would have different components in it to what mine has got, because obviously it's different pollen, it's different plants, so it's good for your local area. So if you're getting it from a local beekeeper just up the road from you,
yeah,
and perhaps you have signs of hay fever, and things like that. It can be beneficial in that local area.
Right. So
It's not. It's not been totally proved beyond doubt, but and some people might say it's an old wives' tale cooked up by beekeepers to sell their honey to you, but it does work. But I always think it's good to support a local beekeeper. Even where I'm in Alarin, it's some really good professional beekeepers.
right.
I'm friends with them, and they're phenomenal what they do. I mean, to wear a bee suit and go out every day in that baking sun when it's hitting 40 degrees plus takes
Sure.
some doing.
I
It's hard work.
can only imagine. I struggle going out with a short sleeve shirt and a pair of shorts on, you know?
Yeah. I mean, I have a ventilated suit and I'm dying at the end of it. And I might only do 10 hive visits in a day. I'll spread it out through a week.
Right.
These guys have got a few hundred hives and they're out every day in the heat and
Wow.
they just carry on. So I've got all the respect in the world for them. It's amazing what they do.
Well, it's interesting, as you say, people might say it's an old wives' tale, but I think my wife would probably agree with you that we do buy local honey. She is normally, she gets a lot of allergies in spring and summer, but actually, since she's been taking this local honey, I think her allergies have gone way down. So I just wonder if you know that there is more to it than an old wives' tale.
I think there is because I have it a lot because it helps. I have ailments I have to put it with, and it works wonders on the indigent. It really does.
Yeah,
But it's like when you see these probiotic drinks and things like that. Honey has got probiotics in it. Raw honey has. Whether it's at the same level, I'm not an expert. I'm not a biologist or I'm not a dietitian either. So, but for me, it works, and that's part of the reason why I got into it. I just wanted something I could do as a hobby and as a benefit for me and takes my time up.
Yeah. So do you eat a lot of honey, John?
We do. We have honey in everything. My wife does a lot of baking. She does honey cakes. We make chili sauces and things with honey. Everything we make, sauce-wise, has got honey. Even pickled onions has got honey in it. The way we do it. So
really? So
we make the most of it.
Is that sort of like using the honey to make almost like a sweet vinegar or something for the pickled onions? Or
We include it. It's included in the honey. So again, we have to put not for vegans on our products.
Yeah, and well, actually, we met at one of the markets, didn't we? And you know,
I'm the lions.
I'm just, you know, I love seeing what people are doing, and but your wife is doing she's got sort of artisan's license. What kind of things is she doing, John?
She actually makes the sauces. She has bee, everything to do with bees, bee jewelry, bee soft furnishings. Everything's related around a bee.
Right.
A bit of fun because she enjoys that sort of thing.
Yeah. So John, you know, you made this massive change in your life, and as I said, I can't imagine creating a bigger difference between life in the UK and the life that you have down here. Any regrets about it? Any things you found difficult about that whole change?
Yeah, moving away from the family originally because my parents were getting on age at that time.
Right.
But my dad said, "Go for it. You only live once." And to be honest, at the time he said the country's going to ruin. He says, "Get out before it sinks."
Right.
So I did, and they used to come twice a year. But I've only got my brother over there now, so he comes over here.
Yeah.
So from the children's perspective, you can't wish for a better life for them.
Yeah, it is a very different way of life, isn't it, for children?
Obviously, you see the English news and you see all the crime and everything. No doubt we've got crime here, but it's more of a bubble. We live in a bubble. That's what I tell the kids. I said, you protect here. In the wider world, you're going to see something totally different. But again, you need to make that discovery for yourself.
Yeah, and because of where you are in Alaurín, if anyone knows this area, Alaurín El Grande, So it's the big Alarin. It is a very kind of community sort of orientated place, isn't it? It is really a community.
It is. I mean, to be honest, I don't go to I don't go to English bars or anything like that. We've got Spanish friends, and we embrace it. I didn't personally, my feeling when we came to Spain, I wanted to be around Spanish people and integrate with them.
Sure.
In Spain, I didn't want to be isolated, and other people may have different views on that, but that's what I want to do. My children are absolutely fluent. I mean, my daughter, she's classed as an Alarino. I mean, the Alarin accent's a bit like Geordie English.
Right,
so,
yes.
And she sounds like an old fishwife when she's speaking.
Uh-huh.
And even the old boys in town think she's, Alarino. And they, straight away, and she's gassing away to them. And half the time, I didn't even understand what she's saying. She's going that fast. And with the dialect, you're thinking, what was that?
Yeah, I think when young people are exposed to a new language, they don't put all the barriers in the place that we adults do. They just absorb it and use it, and they don't get embarrassed about getting things wrong, and they just speak until they get it right, don't they?
Yeah, I mean, I learned Spanish from somebody in Madrid, so my Spanish is a bit different to Alarin and Andalus.
Yeah.
But when I go up to Madrid and those areas and Alicante, they understand me better up there than they do down here. It's bizarre.
John, our time is running out. We've got about 20 seconds till we go out to the final piece of music, and I think Dave's got something special for you. Thank you so much for joining me today. Thanks to everybody who's been listening in, and I wish you a very good weekend, and I'll be back next week with Marcel Salazar. Many thanks, John.
Thank you.